do. Hi, everyone. Welcome. A lot of you are coming in. Normally, I'd give a couple minutes for everyone to come in before getting started, but we do have a fully packed workshop with amazing content, and I want to make sure you all have an opportunity to really dive right into it. So I will get kind of started a bit, but just welcome. You're on Planoly Presents Summer Content Camp. So it's Right This Way, Creative Copywriting for Social with Kate Hamilton, CEO,
Hello.
founder of Sonder and Tell.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you.
Hello. And so just some housekeeping things, and I want to introduce Kate before she starts her workshop, but just make sure to enter in the chat box, click panelists and attendees where you're all joining us from. If you're new to Planoly, Planoly started 5 years ago as the first visual planner for Instagram and has grown into the industry-leading social marketing platform, trusted by over 5 million users to visually plan, schedule, and measure performance across Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. Some fun thing to note that a lot of people might not know is we have an auto post first comment hashtag manager. I know that's like a mouthful, but it allows you to save your hashtags and create groups of predefined hashtags that you can commonly use when you're planning, and you can also auto post those for your content. So super excited about that. We're giving away a free month for those who are new to Planoly. So be on the lookout in the chat box. We will be giving out a discount code. And also just wanted to mention that the chat box is for comments about the workshop. We would love for you to share your IG handles and connect on our Facebook group. So if you can leave the chat box just for the workshop commentary and communicate about the workshop there, and then any IG handles and networking done on the Facebook group, I appreciate it. And always kindness, so please be nice to each other. This is a safe space and a learning environment. So we can get it started. We're really excited to have Kate today. And so Kate is, how I mentioned, co-founder and CEO of Sonder and Tell. So she is the first creative agency specializing in brand story, tone of voice, and copywriting for brands, including Bumble, Rude Health, and Lick. She was named one of Forbes 30 under 40 for media and marketing, and has spoken on storytelling for Courier Magazine, Web Summit, Soho House, and Google. We're really excited to have her. And thank you, Kate, for being here with us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that intro, Marlene. And thanks everyone for introducing yourself as well in the chat. There's so many people from all around the world, which is really cool to see. Let me just check you can all see that okay. Are you good?
Yes, and I will go ahead and log off, and I'll be back for Q&A. So please add all your questions in the Q&A box, and I will let Kate take it away. Thank you, Kate.
Thanks, Marlene. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. As Marlene said, this workshop is called Right This Way. My name is Kate, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Sonder and Tell. So what we do at Sonder and Tell is we work on verbal identity. So a lot of you will probably be familiar with visual identity, which is when graphic designers look at things like logos and colors and typefaces and consider what they say and what messages they put across about brand. We do that, but with words and stories. These are some of our clients on the right-hand side. Rude Health, who's a competitor of Oatly, Lick, who's a direct-to-consumer painting and decorating brand, and of course, everyone knows Bumble. Often clients say that working with us is a bit like having kind of words therapy, where we listen to them, but listen to all the kind of brand challenges that they're having, and we help them express themselves better. So today is about me telling you a kind of bite-sized version of what I know about copy and storytelling, so that you can all level up your social strategy. I have created a worksheet as well, which you don't necessarily need to follow along with. There's a few takeaways, but also you could kind of look at it as a reference point afterwards. So the structure of what we're going to look at today, we're going to start off by looking at the landscape of language in the past year and how things have changed on social. I'll give you a bit of an introduction to copywriting, not just on social, but on all different brand touch points. And then we'll go into tone of voice, exactly what that is, how you can begin to craft it, And then we'll look specifically at copy and tone of voice for social, and then end on how we can perhaps better align your copy and your visuals. So I hope that all sounds good to you. First of all, the landscape of language. So maybe you can just let me know in the chat, there's a lot of you, but what do you think's happened to social media usage in the past year? Do we think it's gone up? Do we think it's gone down? Up, 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 hugely up, 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 up. Yes, you're all bang on the mark. It's gone, oh, sorry, that skipped forward quickly. It's gone up a ton. I mean, it's probably not surprising, right? Because we've all been at home more than ever. A lot of our usual IRL interactions haven't been available to us. So we've been reaching out for community and contact, in a digital sphere. But at the same time as social media usage has gone up, this has been happening against the backdrop of huge cultural, social, political, economic shifts. And I'm not going to, and all of these have impact on language and how we communicate from brand point of view. So I think I could honestly run a whole workshop on these specific shifts. So I'm just going to give you a top line view. Obviously, we've had COVID-19, a huge global health pandemic and crisis that a lot of people have been at home kind of worrying about their families. Black Lives Matter and a call for kind of reparations and a move towards racial justice in the US especially, but on a global level as well. A really divisive US election and constant environmental crisis and that kind of worry too. Oh, sorry, I'm skipping across. What this means for language. If we think about COVID-19 and the fact that we've had this kind of global health crisis where people have been at their homes and more anxious about their health or the health of their family, it makes sense really that brands doing these kind of super shiny, really aspirational kind of content campaigns when there are influencers that they're sending off to these really exclusive places doesn't resonate anymore. So what we've seen is that a lot of the language has become a lot more relatable, brands trying to kind of look customers in the eye and be a bit more everyday and speak to people within their own homes. Black Lives Matter, when that first came to the fore, there was a real huge outcry on social media. But I think that also raised questions is that if you're speaking out against something on social media, like racial justice, a lot of brands did it for the first time, but you can't just say the words. You've got to also look internally and be able to walk the walk too. Look at your processes, look at who you're hiring, and make sure that you're following up any words with action. So there's been a real call for accountability. The US election was obviously hugely divisive, and we've had brands reaching out to their different communities, encouraging people to go out and vote, and in some ways telling them which ways to vote as well in line with their values. And in light of the environment, we've also seen a push for greater transparency. Customers want to know how their clothes are made, the process behind their products, and that they're not coming at a really great cost to the environment. So what I want to really say with this slide is that there's a real scope for brands and a push and a desire for brands to be talking about their values at the same time as people are engaging more and more with social media. And that can feel kind of scary. So this statistic, 83% of millennial consumers prefer buying from companies aligned with their values. That means there's a real opportunity for brands to kind of get out there and say what they think. But at the same time, 66% have boycotted a company due to their stance on a specific issue. That's a really huge statistic. People want to buy in line with their values, but then 2/3 of those millennial consumers will boycott a brand because that something doesn't align with what they think, which can feel scary. So when you are thinking about aligning yourself with a specific issue or expressing your values, keep these 3 things in mind. Number one, you want to always be thinking about your customer. How can you add value to their lives by expressing a point of view? And will they want to hear that from you? Number 2, you want to stay authentic. Think about your own values and whether, your opinion on this matter is something that rings true to who you are. One of the things we always see is around International Women's Day, brands that don't necessarily talk about women or celebrate women in other parts, in other times of the year, all come together and put together these International Women's Day posts. And it can seem a bit like they're sort of jumping on the bandwagon. So consider if it seems like it's an authentic act for you. And thirdly, and really importantly, maintain your tone of voice. So I think there can be a sort of tendency when brands are speaking out about something that feels sort of quote unquote serious, and that they've got to take this sort of serious tone of voice, but actually the best way to do it is to stay true to yourself and have a conversation. Just as an example of this, these are 3 very different brands, all engaging with the US election, but all doing it from their own point of view, with their own values in mind, and with their own different tone of voice. So MTV knows that their audience is a young customer. A lot of Gen Z people are interested in music. Therefore, their take was to celebrate all the young people who showed up to vote in the election. Bumble, on the other hand, we all know they're about women making the first move. Therefore, it makes total sense that the angle they've taken is celebrating Kamala Harris and the first female vice president. Ben & Jerry's, they'd already taken a stance against racial injustice earlier in the year. So when it came to the election, actually, they wanted to keep that really political stance front and center of their commentary on the election. So this is just to say that whatever issue you want to talk about, make sure it's in line with your values and in your tone of voice and with your customer in mind. Okay, so now we've got a little bit of an idea of the landscape of language and how things have shifted over the past year. I'd be interested to know actually how many of you would consider yourselves writers or copywriters. Let me know in the chat. Say yes or no. Okay, a bit of a mix. That's super interesting. Well, I'll tell you how I see copywriting, or how we see copywriting at Sonder and Tell. So what it used to be was what you see on the left-hand side here. So copywriting used to be big splash ad campaigns, designers getting paid a lot, copywriters getting paid a lot to write a slogan that you put out on a billboard and you've got your message across. What copywriting is today is every single touch point of your brand and all the words that you put there. So it could be it is your Twitter captions, it's your Instagram captions, it's what you put on your app, it's what you put on your product. And this at the bottom is actually from the McDonald's career site. So the point is that even things like job descriptions, they are copy, and your words matter hugely. Has anyone read this book by Daniel Kahneman? It's pretty heavy, so I'm not going to judge you if you haven't, but it is great. So he's a behavioral economist. Some of you have. Okay, great. Well, you started it. Parts of it, yeah, that's me too. He's a behavioral economist and winner of one of the Nobel Prizes. And he said that people don't choose between things. They choose between descriptions of things. What that means is that the words you use, the way you're positioning the product, the way you're speaking to your customer has a huge impact on how people perceive you. I think sometimes with platforms like Instagram, there's a real impetus to kind of really think about the visuals that we're using, think about our graphics, think about our photographs, and then kind of think about captions as an after point. That's one of our real bugbears at Sonder and Tell. People do it with branding as well. They'll think about the logo and not think about the headline on the website as much. But actually, by doing that, you're really underselling yourself and not cutting through with customers in the way that you should. In fact, the equivalent of thinking about your visuals and not thinking about your words in copy, it's a bit like buying a Ferrari then filling it with dishwater. Or it's like spending 20 minutes making artisan coffee and letting it go cold. It's like turning up to the party in a Gucci dress and then sitting on the sidelines and not dancing at all. It's like investing in something and then falling at the last hurdle. All of these analogies are to say that your copy and the words that you use at your brand have such a huge effect on how you're perceived and how you interact with your customers. So think about them hard. Let's move on to brand tone of voice. So I work in tone of voice and I really struggle to define it in a really snappy one-liner or a definition. So what I'm going to do is try and show you what I think it means. So I've chosen these three brands, because I think everyone knows them, right? Patagonia, Glossier, and Oatly walk into a bar. What do we think they're going to order and how do we think they're going to order it? Let's go with Patagonia. Let's see what people think about this. Tell me in the chat. Beer, craft beer, IPA, a heavy beer. Great. What about Glossier? Cosmo, we're going to go for cocktails more because we know that they like fun. maybe a little bit more of a women-focused audience as well? And what about Oatly? Latte, milk, non-dairy, iced chai, got some coffee answers in there. Okay, you guys are getting this, which is good. I'll tell you what I've said, because remember, it's what they order, but also how they order it, because that's the tone of voice part, the content and the tone. So Patagonia might say something like, I've never met a craft beer I didn't like. Hold the straw, it's bad for the planet. Cosmo, Glossier might say something like, hey, today's treat is going to be a Cosmo with fresh lime. I'll squeeze just this once. And then Oatly, if you think about that tone of voice, they're always actually a bit weird and wacky and irreverent and slightly overwritten and a bit tongue in cheek. If you're going to guess my drink maker person, you'd probably say an oat milk espresso martini, and you'd probably be right. That doesn't mean I'm always as predictable. Sometimes I skip the drink and eat oat milk ice cream in my pants. So the point I'm trying to get across here is that the brands that have really defined their tone of voice, you can imagine them walking around like they're human beings. You can imagine them walking up to a bar, ordering their drink, and then spending the whole night with them, or not, if they're not the kind of brand you want to spend time with. And also Patagonia, obviously, their values are about the planet, stewardship over the environment. So they've got that into their description. Glossier is a little bit more kind of fun and empowering, and Oatly have got that sense of irreverence too. So that's an exercise I think you can all go away and have a think about, is if your brand were going to the bar, ordering a drink, what would they get and how would they do it? So I think we often do these big projects at Tone of Voice where it takes us quite a while to kind of really position a tone of voice. But a good place to start is with 3 really key words, and think about your values and then think about how they can translate into tone of voice. Patagonia might be something like earnest, rallying, missionary. Glossier might be something like fun, relatable, and empowering. Soho House, or obviously known as a creative membership club, something like current, creative, and playful. It's always good to brainstorm these words with someone else, get a ton of them and then condense them down. And don't be afraid of kind of contradictions if they arise. So a brand could be kind of earnest and fun. If you think those things are both true for you, then that's great. So go for it and try and get those 3 words and then think about how they can root your voice and how that person would actually speak and what drink they'd order too. So keep in mind that your tone of voice is your values in words. If you're a missionary brand, then your tone of voice should be mission driven. It's a way of expressing personality, and it's also a tool to cut through a crowded market. If you think of, even a brand like Oatly, there are a lot of different plant-based milks out there, but Oatly's really cut through because of that really irreverent and characterful tone of voice. So it's a way, especially if you're in a space where there are lots of competitors, to make yourself heard and make yourself stand out. Okay, so let's move on to looking at how we can apply copy and tone of voice for social. So who follows these 3 accounts? I follow all of them. I'm guessing probably a large number of you do these too. So why do you follow Humans of New York? Stories, good stories, real stories, really human storytelling as well. They're real people, and you connection, inspiring, relatability, authentic. Exactly. Who follows Simple Politics? They're really huge in the UK, and they do have a US account as well. So some of you who are in the US might know them. Okay, so what they're really good at is condensing quite complicated political news, of which there has been a lot in the last year, into really digestible sound bites. And some things people always comment saying, I can't bear watching the news at the moment, it's too stressful. But I love following your account because I get the kind of simple message. And what about Lizzo? Why do we like Lizzo? Bold, empowering, confident, fun. She's badass, empowering. She's a vibe. She's good as hell. Exactly. The point I'm making here is that you follow people or platforms on Instagram because they play a certain role. So you've got real connection, human inspiring stories from humans of New York. You've got the kind of simple distillation of complex political statements by Simple Politics. And for Lizzo, you've got empowerment, confidence, joy, honesty. So I think you need to think about your brand when you're posting on social in the same way, in terms of the role that you play in your customers' lives, and how is that going to play out in content? So both in the what you say and then also your tone of voice. So something like empowerment can play out in different ways. You might even say Humans of New York is empowering in a slightly earnest way versus Lizzo, who's empowering in a more joyful way. So always keep both content and tone of voice in mind when you're writing for social. So with that in mind, it's important to define the role you play for your customers. I think in general, writing for social is about just always having that end person in mind rather than your brand. So are you going to be entertaining? Someone like Netflix does this really well, and it makes sense with them because their whole product and brand truth is about entertaining. Well, obviously it's an entertainment platform, but then they actually push that through social with these kind of funny captions. Or are you educating? So this is Meet Day, who's a CBD tampon brand, and they've actually taken quite a kind of scientific position on female health and specifically on period care. So a lot of their role is educating people on their bodies. And they do that in really kind of clear infographics and captions and people can also learn more from their blog. So I've separated entertainment and education for the sake of kind of explaining what the different roles you could play, but there's nothing to say that you can't be both of those things at the same time. So this is a brand that we've worked with at Sonder called Home Things, and if anyone knows Blueland in the US, they do similar things to that. So they've tabletized the cleaning products and have got a really eco-friendly solution to cleaning your home. But a lot of the conversation around the kind of eco credentials was actually getting quite dry and not very exciting. Home Things wanted to cut through in a slightly different way. So they went for this kind of irreverent, cheeky, quite tongue-in-cheek tone of voice. The message being you can tackle serious problems without necessarily having a serious tone. So question whether humor works for your brand and whether that aligns with your values and whether it might actually give you an edge in a way to cut through. Perhaps you're doing something totally different and you're offering an escape. Recess do this really nicely. I think the clue is in their name because they are called Recess, which obviously means a break. But looking at their visuals is a bit like being taken into this kind of dream world. And that comes across in their captions as well. A reminder that it's okay to float back to society at your own pace. Once you've defined the role that you play in your customer's life, so are you joy? Are you entertainment? Are you irreverence? Are you going to be empowering like Lizzo? Or are you going to be giving people really distilled information like Simple Politics or like Meet Day? Once you've defined exactly that role, then you need to play that role consistently. If you don't play that role consistently, then you end up giving these really weird mixed impressions of who you are as a person. And no one really likes that. So this is a brand called Park Fast, who I think literally help people find parking spaces in New York. On the left-hand side, this is their Instagram, which is very earnest. Extra grateful for you this holiday season. Down below, a new year, a new road ahead. On the right-hand side, this is their Twitter. So you can't parallel park, it'll be our little secret. When you look back at your life, will the money you saved by not parking with us be more valuable than the time you spent circling the block? So this to me sounds like two different people. This is not to say that you can't flex between platforms, but I don't think the person who says extra great for you this holiday season also says, so you can't parallel park, it'll be our little secret. And what the effect is that they feel inconsistent. They feel like someone who doesn't necessarily know who they are. So make sure when you've defined your role, you do that consistently. A good brand to look at this consistency reference is Innocent, who actually are really famous for kind of almost making this cute and fun tone of voice, which they did in the UK and is now kind of rolled out globally. I won't read all of these, but have a look at them because they are so consistent, from their product copy to their Instagram captions to their Twitter feed and to their TikTok too. Write like you'd speak. So this one seems obvious, but actually I think when people, sometimes there's a bit of nerves around writing, and when people come to try and write captions for social media, they can kind of clam up and get a little bit formal. So I think, okay, actually this is a good example. This is Bulgari, who they serve a certain audience, but this caption just, I can't. The versatility of iconicity. These Colosseum-inspired contours contain near infinite variations within them, making B01 the only icon for expressing your bold dreams of style perfection. Demonstrating the versatility of its creativity, Bulgari offer these rings in bold rose gold or sublime white gold with diamonds. Shop online now. I just don't think that people speak like this. The versatility of iconicity. I don't think anyone says that in conversation. And then they say versatility again. I mean, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that Bulgari are talking to a very elevated consumer and perhaps want to elevate their brand language. But for me, this makes for a really awkward reading experience. And I think in general, you just want to write like you would speak in conversation. So I've got some tips here for how to do this quickly. And they're also, I think, on your worksheet, but just to do a quick check for writing like you speak. So use contractions rather than saying things like they will, we will, you will, shorten them like you would in conversation. They'll, will, you'll. Swap formal words for one you'd actually use in a spoken sentence. So things like help instead of assist. Use more verbs than nouns. You can say we've launched or we've decided rather than we've made a decision to launch. Always use the active and not the passive voice. So without going too kind of into a grammar lesson, the active voice is when it's very clear who the subject of the sentence is and what the object is as well. So we design shoes. The passive voice is when that's all obscured. So the shoes were designed. By who? We don't know there. The classic case of the passive voice is politicians and newspaper headlines who always say mistakes were made, and it's not clear who made those mistakes. So it's a way of kind of obscuring accountability. Also make the customer the hero. So don't explain what you do for them, but show where they can go with you as a guide. You've just got a skincare routine or something like you're about to take control of your skin, rather than something like we're saving you from acne, which makes the brand the hero of this. Someone's just asked actually here, does these tips also apply for luxury brands? Absolutely. I think even if you're a luxury brand, you don't want to be sounding so kind of gilded that you don't sound like there's a real person behind the brand having a conversation. Never slip into formal language. Here's a brand actually who's kind of the opposite of Bulgari. Some of you probably know Starface, but they do this to the extreme where they don't just write like they speak, but they write like how their customer would speak or even text. So they're quite a good reference, especially anyone who's talking to Gen Z. I made a cute little friendship bracelet just for you. They're really getting into the mindset and the language of their customers. So those are three quick tips for how to start leveling up your copy and tone of voice for social. Now we're going to look at how you can better marry up your copy with your visuals. So before we get into this, what do you think comes first, the image or the caption? A bit of both, actually. I thought everyone would say image, but some people go with caption. Someone said idea. Whoever said idea, I think that's exactly right. I was going for a trick question here. So it's the story that comes first. I think in an ideal world, you want to be getting so ahead of your social plan that you've got this idea, this concept, this campaign that you want to run with, and then you go away and you commission the image and the caption together. But in reality, I know that doesn't always happen, and often we are kind of retrofitting captions to images. So here are a few quick tips of how to do that. I don't know if you guys know this account, but Never Be This. Girls with Irrelevant Captions is so funny. At the beginning, when I mentioned International Women's Day and people jumping on the bandwagon. So here you've got a fitness instructor sitting in front of a plate of pancakes saying, Happy International Women's Day and happy B-Day to my mummy. Just random. And then on the right-hand side, someone leaning against the wall, basically posting a thirst trap saying, allergies suck. So don't be this. Don't be girls, boys, content editors with irrelevant captions. So this is a planning exercise, which is really useful for social, but actually any piece of writing. So know, feel, do. Ask yourself what you want the customer to know, how you want them to feel, and do we want them to take any action? This is quite a good way to kind of structure your information. If you want them to know something important, then don't bury that information. That needs to come first. If you want to make them feel a certain way, that's often a question of your tone of voice. And if you want them to take any action, include that too. Painter Jacket is a really nice brand, worth looking at actually, because they do community building really well. But here, the main thing they want their customers to know is that there's a launch tomorrow. There's only 750 available. They then get them excited by saying these guys are ready. Fabric is on its way. The team in the factory in Portugal is ready. And then finally, any action. If you have questions, head to our stories for more details. So that's a really nice example of knowing exactly in what order to deliver the information. It's like they've planned it out, know, feel, do. I'm going to let you take this exercise away, but go away afterwards and plan a post to let your customers know that you've run out of your hero product. Just as a little bit of a hint on this one, if there's bad news, for example, that you've run out, like I said, don't try and bury that at the end. You want to lead with it and say, we're really sorry this has happened. Then figure out how you want them to feel about them and if there's any action afterwards. Go beyond the picture. So an image can be a really good kind of stimulus, or an idea can be a good piece of stimulus for storytelling. But actually, what you want to do is go beyond that and think about the kind of characters. Are there characters in that specific frame, or could they be pulled outside just on the edges and you can kind of make reference to them? Is there something that might have happened just before the image, or is there something that's going to happen after? If it's a still, then think about how we could bring it to life with kind of a plot twist and different themes. Someone who does this really well is Alexa Chung, the fashion brand, not just the person. So she plays on just really kind of funny turns of events and often characterizes and personifies her clothing. So this top one, there's a chair on its own, ghosted by the model. It's almost that question of what just happened. Or Alexa Chung, our broderie corset dress, billowy sleeves and a corseted bodice that's recommended for activities far more glamorous than churning butter. So kind of referencing that this is a slight sort of milkmaid look and turning it into something quite quirky and fun. Let's try it with this one. See how quick you guys are. See if you can put one in the chat. What do you think's just happened or about to happen here? That's true. Reformation do this thing. Getting ready for the Olympics. That's quite a good one. Running, stopping and smelling the hydrangeas. Yeah, that's where my mind went to. Looks like she fell over. Someone's got it. Okay. This is what they went for, which I love. Searching for your keys in the pub garden the morning after, like, thank goodness we're still working from home, eh? So got that really dry Britishness there and using the image as kind of this screenshot for a wider story. If you're actually selling something, then go straight to the benefit for the customer. You often see this with product launches where they say, these are our new striped t-shirts, or these are our warm leggings. But actually, what does that mean? Turn that into a story in itself. If something's really warm, then that means you can stay outside longer. Think about how your product can improve people's lives. Is it solving a specific problem for them? And can you be emotive, not just descriptive? Pangaea have done this really well here. So yes, they've said that the actual sort of product attributes, so that the tracksuit is absorbent, lightweight, and oh so soft, but they've actually called this new kind of collection your beach tracksuit. So you automatically know what that means. It's about being comfortable and kind of soft at the beach and almost having like loungewear for sandier times. So I think that's quite a good example of that. Not just they have listed the product attributes, then they've turned it into a kind of more of emotional benefit. Like, yeah, I didn't even know I needed a beach tracksuit, but now I kind of want it. Here's Sweaty Betty, who's one of the brands we worked with. So have a think about how you could turn this caption around, and make it a little bit more benefit focused. So they said, because you should have the chance to move in your nude, Your favorite seamless underwear now comes in 6 new skin tones with extended sizing from XL to XXL. We think we'll love them so much we even modeled them ourselves to show why representation really matters. So I think the main benefit here is probably that it's a seamless and sheer bra. That's a bit snappier. Moving your nude with our new seamless underwear, exactly, making it a bit snappier. Or something like your favorite seamless underwear now comes in 6 new skin tones with different sizes. To everyone else, your underwear is invisible, but you always deserve to be seen. Feel comfortable in your own skin, that's nice too. Finally, think about inviting people in and think about creative ways you can start conversation too. How would your brand invite someone in, or what do you want an opinion on that you can ask your customers for? And how would you start a conversation that's a little bit unique? Think back to the beginning when we're saying, where can you add value? And where would you weigh in with your own opinion? Oatly, for example, I think this is quite a clever way of doing that. So what they've done is given people conversation starters that they can go away and use with their own family next time someone asks them about why they're vegan or what's the point in being vegan. So they've almost given people these little cues that they can use in conversation. So I thought that was quite a creative way of bringing someone in. Have a think then about what unique conversation you could have with your brand. Where can you add value and invite your customers in for their opinion too? And finally, you might want to think about making the verbal visual. We've seen quite a lot of this in the past year, even something like Day with the infographics. You don't always necessarily need a beautiful photo and a caption. If your words are ownable enough, if they're shareable enough, can they actually stand without an image? So we do that quite a lot at Sonder and Tell. Our culture is storytelling and our values are that words really matter. Therefore, quite a lot of the time we make the decision for the words to stay on their own. Also, we know that our target audience is a bunch of writers who actually will like reading quite long quotes or captions. So this is a Roxane Gay quote that we shared fairly recently. If you want any more tips on copywriting, we have a weekly newsletter at Sonder and Tell called The Word, which has got lots of different tips and tricks for writing for brands. We interview different marketing directors as well and ask how they've built their brands from the ground up, or how they've kind of created tone of voice in-house. So it's a good one for anything extra that you might want in terms of copy advice. So as a summary, when you're looking at writing for social and looking specifically at copy and tone of voice, make sure you define that role for your customers. Think again about that slide of Humans of New York with Lizzo and with Simple Politics. You don't have to be any of those roles, but think how clearly defined they are and what role you want to play. Make sure you play it consistently. Make sure you always write like you speak and don't slip into formal language. When you're planning content, think about know, feel, do, and the order of information, what you want to deliver to your customer first. Go beyond the picture, ask what happened before, what happened after, who are the characters, how can I build a little world within this one frame? Always think of the benefit rather than the product attribute, and make sure you're inviting people in, and do that in creative ways. Think of that Oatly slide where they were giving people conversation starters for arguing with their parents about veganism. And finally, consider making the verbal visual. We've seen that quite a lot on social media in the past year, and it's more and more proof that words really do matter and can have a big effect on the way people perceive and interact with your brand. And that's what we're all about with Sonder and Tell. So keep in touch, follow us. And I've also know I've got time for a few questions. So let me know if I can help. And thank you for being so great in the chat, by the way. It's so nice to feel like I'm connected to lots of you.
Thank you, Kate, so much. And thank you, everyone. I think this was the most interactive workshop we've ever had. And
oh, really?
yeah, and I love that everyone had such great little captions and what they thought for the voice of the brand. So you can tell everyone was having a great time. We do have some time for some questions. Y'all are asking a lot, so I'm sorry we won't be able to go through all of them, but I tried to go through them and see kind of trends. So we have one. If you're part of a brand that has never or rarely made a statement on race, politics, and the environment crisis. How do you as a brand get started?
Yeah, it's such a good question, and it's a weighty question.
Yeah.
I think my answer would be that if you've never made a stance on it before, then I think it's an internal question for your team to have behind the scenes before you talk about it publicly. So I think that's why a lot of brands ended up getting called out. If we think about a year ago with Black Lives Matter, is that they almost treated it as a kind of marketing piece and put out these statements, but without actually making commitments behind the scenes to change their hiring policies, or to things like that. So I think my advice to you would be to have those conversations behind the scenes first, no matter which of those issues it is that you want to discuss. Put a plan together, align your team around the values, and then talk about it publicly so you can be accountable to it. But then you have this kind of strategy and a plan of action for when you're asked on it, and you have accountability there too.
I completely agree. It needs to be authentic, and it needs to be authentic to your brand. If you're not really doing anything to back up the statement, maybe don't mention it, because everything's saved and people will come out for you. Come after.
Exactly, and people are so much more discerning and aware of that now. So I'm not saying don't talk about things, because I think people should, but it has to come from a place of authenticity and an action plan as to what you're actually doing.
Agree. And then another question was how to best incorporate sales type messaging organically and in alignment with an intuitive wellness business.
So I think going back to that specifically, that piece about the benefit first is always really useful for sort of salesy emails, because I think I don't know exactly what your business is, but a lot of times when people kind of launch products or start explaining them to people, they go straight to these attributes. So, okay, this is going to, this has, I'm trying to think of a wellness message. This has rosehip oil or something in the cream. But actually, what's the benefit? Is it going to make your skin smoother or improve kind of balance of hormones in skin or something like that? So I think that's probably the quickest fix I can tell you is go to the benefit, not just the product attribute, and also that point of making the customer the hero. So what journey are you taking them on with your product? Don't just make it kind of quite reflective on you as a brand.
I agree. I think Ritual does a really great job with that, with their vitamins, and Seed also does a really great job if you need some inspiration. You kind of forget that they're selling you a product.
Yeah, because they've built this kind of world around it.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's like, the voice you want on social. I have Megan. Any tips for customizing voice tone of personal brands versus business? And we had a similar question around like influencers.
Yeah, it's really tricky but I think it's a really important exercise to do, because I think probably I can imagine that you almost feel like everything is being signed off from you, your personal person, rather than you as this kind of influencer presence. And actually it can be really useful in terms of your business mindset to have a bit of separation. So I would go and try and do a bit of that words brainstorming that we mentioned, trying to get to those 3 words that could really root your personal brand, and maybe do that with a friend, someone who kind of has that lens, or even if you can do it with some of your target audience, even better. So get them to throw out some words and phrases of how they describe the role you play and the voice that you're already putting out there. And I think building out that slight separation from you, the business, to you, the personal person, you'll actually probably find it relieves you of a bit of stress in terms of crafting captions.
I agree. I think it's writing as if you're speaking to your friend.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then we had a couple of photographers asking questions too. This one's from Anonymous. How would you suggest caption telling for photographers?
So I guess photographers are always leading with images first. I guess it depends on the type of photography, but going back to those kind of points about trying to build a bit of a world around the image that you're selling. So are there characters in the photo? And if there's a character, can you call them by name and tell their story and get a quote from them? what happened just before the shot? Is it almost, are you telling the story of you as the photographer? So was the one shot that you posted actually really difficult to get, and you have to kind of, I don't know, wait around for hours to get this exact perfect moment? Because I think people quite like those sort of behind the scenes stories as well, of how creatives actually create.
I agree. I think it's nice to know the process. We have a question from Anonymous, but I think you kind of answered this a bit. So they asked, so we shouldn't write formal captions ever, but I think you kind of answered it in the sense of depending what your brand is that you're speaking for, but I will let you go into that.
Yeah, sorry, the question was, should you not have
Write formal
use
captions
formal?
ever. Mm-hmm.
You should never use formal language ever. Like, really, I think this is probably the main thing we say at Sonder and Tell, because what formality does is just create distance between people. And I think it's the example of, so the brand that people quite like in the UK, which I don't know if it's in the US now too, is all these challenger banks like a Monzo or Starling. So the reason they've done well is because people don't like even their bank writing to them saying, "Dear sir, madam, we are warning you that we shall shut down your account in whatever this time." It just sounds like there's not a human being behind it. And the reason people like Monzo have done well, brands like Monzo have done well, is because they just speak to you like a human being. So I would just question the word formal. I don't think there's ever a need for that. I think if you want to use slightly elevated language, things that create, like, if it's a luxury brand, for example, create that kind of sensory feeling in customers, go for it. But formality, words like however, assist, require, enable, strip them out. We've got a whole separate workshop on that. I'm getting quite into it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Leave them for your
no
essays.
formality. Yeah, exactly.
Leave them for your
And your
college
professors.
papers. Yeah. I think we're a little over time, but I did see a lot of questions around this one. So I'll do one last question that says, do you recommend to batch captions for IG, social media? How to come up with caption ideas?
To batch captions, so do lots at the same time. Well, I don't know if this is available to everyone, but at Sonder and Tell, we write in teams. So it's really helpful to have, almost, if you have a partner, I know maybe not all of you do, but have one person almost thinking of the content, so the message we want to get across, and then another person almost be the guardian of the tone of voice and be like, okay, is this actually the tone we want to say? And you can pass things back between you. So I think if you're doing batch captions, maybe one of you drafts more and someone else helps you push them. I do think that culture of kind of editing and pushing one another and making sure the words get to the best possible place can be really useful if you have the luxury of a friend or someone who can help you do that.
Yes, and if you're using Planoly, you can definitely, program that and set it up and schedule it to go live whenever you need it to, and edit before it goes live. So we do have that capability to help y'all.
There you go. Use Planoly.
There you go. Well, thank you so much, Kate. We had, over 40 questions, so I'm sorry, everyone, that I couldn't go through them. Thank you so much for your time. This is being recorded and will be sent out to y'all. But Kate, if you want to tell everyone how they can stay in touch and just remind them about your newsletter or anything like that.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, Sonder and Tell, which is big and bold at the bottom there, give us a follow on Instagram, and in our bio, you can sign up to our newsletter, The Word, which has weekly writing tips and bits and pieces on copy and tone of voice.
Well, thank you so much, Kate. I learned so much in this workshop, and I know based off the chat box that everyone, was just taking it all in. So we really appreciate your time. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We have one last workshop next week, so I hope to see you all there.
Amazing. Thank you, Marlene. Thank you for joining, everyone. Bye.
Bye.